What is something about yourself that sounds totally made up but is 100% real? I built a 13-foot-tall T-Rex with Christopher Walken's head, and New York Magazine called it highbrow and brilliant. My dad's name is Luigi and my uncle's name is Mario. They are brothers. ETA, I forgot to add that my dad is also a plumber. My great-grandma ran a brothel back at the turn of the 20th century. She was Algonquin and people were pretty racist back then, so she had a hard time getting business. Since it was a coastal town, Maine, she bought up a couple leaky old rowboats and would load them up with hookers and booze and row them out to the ships at night. When ships came into port, most of the crew would get shore leave and hit the bars and brothels in town, but they always had to leave a few sailors on the ship to keep an eye on it. My great-grandmother figured those guys had money too and probably felt left out. She basically set up water-based lot lizards. Or Uber hoes. My grandpa and his sisters grew up in the brothel and no one would talk to them or socialize with them. My grandpa met my grandma picking green beans for a local farmer. They fell in love. When they wanted to get married, they had to leave the state to get away from her family that were utterly disgusted that she would marry the son of a whore. So they ran off to Detroit because GM was hiring, and that's how my family came to Michigan. I was once sponsored by the Crunk Energy Drink Company for sailing. I imagine I was the only sailor on their list. I literally just emailed them saying that I sailed and asked if they wanted me to put stickers on my boat. They sent me a few cases of the drink, t-shirts, hats, the works. My car was known as the Crunk Mobile. I took my mother for a surprise trip to NYC. She got married to my father there in '68. The surprise was manufactured by way of telling her we were going to Australia. We live in New Zealand, so a trip to Australia is not a huge deal, it's the type of thing you could do for the weekend, and therefore she packed a bag and brought her passport. We got to the airport and said, "Surprise. We're going to New York," and she cried her eyes out with delight. When we arrived, on our first morning, I said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" She said, "When I was last here, in 1968, the Twin Towers weren't complete, so I'd like to go to the top of them. Your wish is my command." I said, and off we went to the WTC. That was the afternoon of September 10, 2001. Suffice it to say, there was a particular poignancy when we looked out the window at around 8 a.m. the next morning. A horse threw me in the air when I was a child. But I wasn't on his back. He grabbed the skin of my back with his teeth and yeeted me. My dad kidnapped me and took me to Singapore for very malicious purposes, I'm sure you could imagine. I was 15 and my dad literally had fake documents and suitcases filled with random clothes. When we got there, we went to a sketchy hotel and after 15 minutes he went to the bar. A bit after that, some guy just walks in. I was confused, but he began muttering saying I was too pale and too old, and he left. I called my dad but he didn't answer, so I climbed out through the window and went to the police. They put me on a plane home that same hour. I don't really tell people because it's a bit of a crazy story and sounds made up, hence why it's here, but yeah. I sneeze when I think of sex. Every single time. My wife likes to give me shit if I just sneeze innocently. She thinks she's a riot. Edit. Judging by all the Me Too comments, this isn't as unheard of as I thought. If you sneeze because of sex, don't worry, you're still a freak, but you're not alone. When I was a kid, I woke up to find my cat giving birth to her kittens on my pillow, 1 inch from my face. I took it as a compliment. I lost my heel in a lawnmower accident. Edit. Here's the story. I was 4 at the time and I won't say who exactly did it. But he was mowing and it was a riding mower and the hitch on the back where you can hook a little trailer. I loved to stand on that part and ride. Well, this time I saw a frog in the grass and being the 4-year-old I was at the time, I jumped off the mower and onto the grass and put my hands over the frog to catch it, and he didn't realize I had jumped off and he backed up. A pelican engulfed my head with its massive F-King beak when I was a small child. Pelicans are cunts. I won 2 TV game shows. The $10,000 Pyramid won $10,300 in 1975, and Sale of the Century was on the show for 9 days, won $34,000 in cash and prizes in '85. Arrested and spent 3 days in a holding cell for a crime that I didn't commit, about a year after the whole matter was done and dusted with. Mind you, I say didn't commit the crime. But I was involved in the story from start to finish. What was the crime you were accused of? My wife, then girlfriend, and I eloped. We crossed over 3 states in India over a 5-day period to get married. My father-in-law, then mortal nemesis, is a well-connected man. He got in touch with his contacts in the police department to try and get a hold of us and filed a formal complaint as part of due process. Long story short, we got married. The rather inept police couldn't find a couple of 21-year-olds. Over the next 4 months, all of it was sorted out. First, we were vilified, then the parents were mollified, etc. etc. But in the beautiful ending to that story, my father-in-law forgot to retract his complaint. Proceed to our first wedding anniversary and we were taking a flight out of the country for a celebratory vacation. From Bombay Airport, India to Dubai Airport, the United Arab Emirates. I was flagged at immigration and was taken across to a cell where I was duly arrested. My crime? Kidnapping. I was being accused of having kidnapped the lady I was now married to. Taken to a cell. Whilst my wife tried to explain the misunderstanding. One cunt of a cop told her, "Madam, don't worry, we know how Stockholm Syndrome works, you are safe now," etc. And this was on a Friday evening. Judicial process was followed and I was released by the judge on the following Monday. Faced with tears of joy, hell of a story to share with people when we include all the details of the planning and execution. Edit, we marked our 10th anniversary on the 12th of this month and the 9th anniversary of me getting my ass hauled to jail. Zany face. When my mom was in grad school she took several labs where she worked with cadavers. Because my dad worked nights she often had to take me to class with her, and she'd usually just plonk me down on the table with the cadaver while she worked on it. "Can I go to work with you?" Over my dead body. I ran out of gas outside of La Paz, Bolivia. Luckily it was downhill for about 6 kilometers into the city. I coasted the whole way on my motorbike, past buses and drifted into a gas station. Never missed a beat. My ex and I were having a huge argument in a hotel parking lot. My friend and ex's dad were there as witnesses. 2 big buses pulled up and Justin Bieber got off one of them with a security guard and walked right past us. I was crying and my ex was yelling at me and JB said, and I quote, "Hey, stop that." My ex yelled back at him, "White PPL shouldn't have dreads," and Justin just got onto the other bus his guard. My friend was cracking up saying, "Was that Justin Bieber?" And sure enough, some people in his entourage or whatever were staying at that hotel and he was in town that night for a concert. TLDR, Justin Bieber told my ex to stop yelling at me, and then my ex yelled at him. I was shooting some stuff in my village and a bullet ricocheted and hit me in the torso. I was afraid my parents would kill me if they found out. I was young, so I used a knife and tweezers to remove the fragment and a stapler to stitch it up and then covered the wound, and they never found out until a few years later when I told them. I was the best man on both sides of a lesbian wedding because I had dated both the bride and the bride, stayed close friends and introduced them to each other after our breakups.